On July 26, 1974, 12-year-old Leslie Metcalf was returning from the beach in Provincetown, Massachusetts with her family in the late afternoon. A local dog had followed them, and when it took off barking, Leslie decided to run ahead of her parents and follow. In the dunes at Race Point Beach, amongst the scrub pines a mile east of a ranger station, Leslie discovered the decomposing body of a naked woman, approximately 5 feet, 6.5 inches tall, 145 pounds, between 20 and 40 years old, lying on one side of a beach towel, with her head on top of a folded pair of jeans and a blue bandana. It's estimated the body had been lying there anywhere from 10 days to 3 weeks before being discovered. Her head had been crushed on the left side, and she had been almost entirely decapitated. While no weapons were found, it's believed that something akin to a military entrenching tool was used to nearly sever the head. Also noticeably absent from the corpse were the victim's hands, presumably removed to avoid identification via fingerprints. The violent state in which the body was left obviously suggested murder, and with no apparent sign of a struggle at the time, authorities believed that the unidentified victim would have known her murderer. Some of the only evidence of another person being around were size 10 footprints that indicated a heavy person who was running, and Provincetown Police Chief Jimmy Meads said the killer likely drove the victim to the dune in a four-wheel drive sand vehicle to sunbathe. Despite using bloodhounds, studying missing persons bulletins, scouring the registers of local lodgings, and looking into anyone who had a permit to bring their vehicle into the area, police turned up nothing. Margie Childs, a Provincetown local, noted in 2019 that the fact that no one could identify the Lady of the Dunes in the tight-knit community was very strange. In their attempt to ID the victim, police turned to the victim's extensive dental work, worth thousands of dollars at the time, and noted to be of New York style. Details of the dental work were sent to every dentist in Massachusetts, published in 2 dental journals, and distributed to organizations like the FBI and Interpol. No one came forward recognizing the work. The body was exhumed in 1980, so blood samples could be taken and an approximation of the victim's face could be molded from the skull. Photos of the resulting bust were sent around the country in the hopes that someone would recognize it. No identification resulted. 20 years later, in 2000, the body was exhumed again, when a bone fragment was taken to test a potential lead. That again turned up nothing. In 2013, the body was exhumed for a 3rd time to obtain even more DNA. Still, nothing has produced a positive identity for the Lady of the Dunes. Despite over 4 decades of dead ends, investigations continue. According to journalist Mary Ann Bragg, after 3 exhumations, authorities currently have the skull, ribs, the left scapula, the right scapula, a tissue sample of a leg, and hair samples in their possession. Cape officials are looking into a new method for identifying the body using DNA evidence and genealogy. DAs from California who worked on the Golden State Killer case, which was finally solved using genealogy records, have been brought over to look into the case. There's even a Twitter account dedicated to discovering the identity of the Lady of the Dunes. Still, an answer is anything but guaranteed. Prior to his death in 2011, Police Chief Meads stated that the only way to solve the case would be if someone on their deathbed wanted to clear their conscience before passing. Without that, it appears the identity of the Lady of the Dunes, as well as her murderer, will remain unsolved.
The long-standing mystery was finally solved when the FBI announced the identification of an unidentified homicide victim on October 31, 2022. The victim was found in Massachusetts, but her identity had remained unknown for years. The FBI used investigative genealogy to generate a DNA profile, which was used to identify distant relatives and eventually lead to the victim's identification. The victim was revealed to be Ruth Marie Terry, but the FBI did not disclose any details about potential suspects or the circumstances surrounding Terry's murder in Massachusetts. The same method of investigative genealogy has been used to identify other unidentified homicides and over 150 criminals, including the notorious Golden State Killer. So who was Ruth Marie Terry? Ruth Marie Terry's life was full of twists and turns, but her mysterious disappearance in 1974 left her family with more questions than answers. Born into poverty in Tennessee, Terry faced financial difficulties as a young mother and ultimately gave up her son for adoption in exchange for debt relief. She later moved to California and eventually married antiques dealer Guy Rockwell Moldovan in Reno, Nevada. In the months leading up to her disappearance, Terry's family noticed that something was amiss with her. Her grandniece, Brittany Novoglonsky, stated that Terry seemed distant and that Moldovan acted possessively towards her. Terry and Moldovan visited her family in Tennessee before setting off to search for antiques across the United States. They spoke about returning to Massachusetts, but Terry never made it there. Moldovan returned to Tennessee in the late summer of 1974 without Terry, claiming that she had gone missing from their California home. Terry's brother, James, hired a private investigator who discovered that all of her belongings had been sold and that she had left the state of her own volition. The investigator also claimed that Terry had become involved with a religious cult. For the next 2 decades, Terry's family believed that she was deceased and listed her as such in family obituaries. However, her sister-in-law, Carol Terry, theorized that she may have been in a witness protection program and unable to contact her family. So who was her husband? On November 2, 2022, the Massachusetts State Police announced that they were seeking information on Guy Rockwell Moldovan, the deceased husband of Ruth Marie Terry, who was identified as the victim of a 1979 homicide case. Moldovan, who had also been known as Raoul Guy Moldovan, Raoul Guy Rockwell, and Guy Moldovan Rockwell during his lifetime, was an orphan adopted by Abram Albert Zadworansky Moldovan and Sylvia Lily Silverblatt. In 1960, Moldovan's second wife, Manzanita Aileen Manzi Ryan, and her daughter, Dolores Ann Mearns, disappeared in Seattle, Washington, and Moldovan was the prime suspect in their disappearance. Investigators found dismembered human body parts in Moldovan's septic tank, but they were unable to prove they were from either of the missing women. Moldovan was never charged in connection with the disappearances, as the Kings County elected prosecutor was reluctant to charge Moldovan with murder without a confirmed body of a victim. Moldovan subsequently faced larceny charges for swindling his third wife's family out of $10,000 around the time his second wife went missing. In 1961, he was convicted of those charges and was sentenced to no more than 15 years. Moldovan is also a suspect in the June 1950 murder of 28-year-old bread truck driver Henry Lawrence Red Baird and the disappearance of his 17-year-old girlfriend, Barbara Jo Kelly, that occurred shortly thereafter. Baird's body was discovered on the beach near Table Bluff the following morning, and he had received a headshot to the back. Except for his shoes and socks, he was naked. Kelly's personal clothing was found carefully folded and tucked underneath the rest of his, with the exception of her shoes and stockings. No trace of Kelly herself could be found. Moldovan worked as a short-order cook in the restaurant owned by his father-in-law, and one of Fortuna's 2 restaurants was owned by the parents of Moldovan's first wife, with whom he was then cohabiting. Barbara Kelly had a job at the other eatery. True crime writer and Rule devoted a section of her 2007 book Smoke, Mirrors and Murder to Moldovan in connection with the disappearance of his second wife and her daughter, with an extensive discussion of police efforts to connect Moldovan with the crime. Moldovan married a woman named Terry in February 1974 in Reno, Nevada. Ruth Marie Terry. The Massachusetts State Police are currently investigating the case as a homicide, but there is still much to uncover about what happened to Ruth Marie Terry before her death. The identification of the victim brings a sense of closure to Terry's family, but also serves as a reminder that justice still needs to be served in this case. Thanks for tuning into our channel where we revisited some of the most intriguing solved cases that were once covered by Buzzfeed Unsolved. We hope you enjoyed delving deeper into these mysteries and learning about the latest developments that led to their resolution. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest content. Until next time, keep exploring the mysteries of the world.